the definition of bad to me evolves from our own values. How much investment your manager is having on your growth.
So, why do you think bad bosses still exist and even get promoted?
And then the other one is really confusing performance with potential. Somebody is a great individual performer, they're not necessarily going to make it as a great leader. I do not want disruption. So let's promote, keep this person happy.
When should someone realize that their boss is actually holding them back rather than helping them move forward?
If you always have to walk on this eggshell where you cannot have a conversation, you cannot give feedback, it's one way.
Hi, Sarah, how are you doing?
Hey Divya, good to meet you. Doing great, and how are you?
I am good. I'm so glad to be reconnecting with you after so many years and especially to be able to kick off this personal project with you. So, welcome to Let's Talk.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for thinking of me, Divya. Pleasure to be connected after so long. It
Same,
doesn't feel so long though.
same here. WhatsApp. Thanks to WhatsApp. So, yeah, the series has been on my mind for a while now. And, we often hear the polished LinkedIn versions of work and leadership, but we rarely talk or even recognize or acknowledge the messy and human side of our workplaces and work life in general. The doubts, the quiet frustrations, the thing we only share with a close friend and often keep it to ourselves rather. So, with Let's Talk, I want to create a space for those real conversations. It's about going inside work, but beyond titles. So, and when we are starting this, I thought, like, what could be the better way to begin than by talking about something that we all have felt at some point in our careers? So, the impact of our bosses, the good ones who shape us, and the not so great ones who will still leave a mark too. So we'll start, but before we dive in, can we have a quick introduction of yours? Just a very quick, short one.
Yeah, my name is Saraswathi. I work as managing director, country head at Lightcast. I have been in industry for 25 plus years, a gray hair covered, which you will not see. Um, been in technology industry, IT industry for way too long now, with many organizations which have shaped me the way I am. Been with many organizations like Wipro, Accenture, Cisco, Danske Bank, which have all helped me learn every single day, both in terms of technology and in terms of leadership and management style.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. So I think we are good to jump in the actual conversation now. So we all have heard that saying that people don't leave companies, but they leave bad bosses. So picking up from this particular phrase, in your view, what actually makes a boss bad? Is it about their leadership style, a lack of emotional intelligence, or you think is there if there's something deeper at play?
No, that's a great question, Divya. The definition of bad to me evolves from our own values. If in my upbringing I've been told, and if from my experience I've defined bad as something, that defines bad at workplace too, because we all bring ourselves to workplace, right? But the definition of bad can be very different for another colleague of mine who has a very different experience and values. Um, Uh, Lack of emotional intelligence, absolutely yes, but it's not necessarily the only component, right? There are many attributes. Um, at least one could say defines bad, right? Um, wh- while lack of emotional intelligence is one part, I think communication becomes key. Uh, I've seen some people, some managers, some colleagues who are not necessarily great at technology, not necessarily great at um, leadership, but one strength they always carried is how do they communicate the vision to the team? How do they define big picture and how do they ensure team collaboration, and how do they carry that legacy forward, right? If that is missing, then it falls through the crack, right? So through the communication, if the direction is not given, it can become very, very destructive. And then the destructive feedback could lead to blame and not growth. So it looks like somebody is attacking the individual and not the problem. So to me, communication is another big element of what defines one. And with the communication, the transparency and the tone and respect for the other individual, all of that comes into picture, right? So you walk into a room, and then there is somebody who's giving you the same feedback or telling you the same thing, but with the right tone. You still take that feedback and work on it. But somebody else telling the same thing in a very different manner, with an arrogance and not giving clarity, or adding a tinge of favoritism, that could instantly create a very toxic environment. Personally, I have not seen. Again, some reasons, some of the things that I've heard many people leave organization is micromanagement. I've been blessed to not have any manager who have been micromanaging me, but I've heard from a lot of my peers and colleagues that micromanagement is a bigger source of problem to them. They need empowerment to be able to operate in a way where they think they are most productive to the organization. Personally, I have had managers where they felt insecure, or it could be an ego, where if you do not sit and talk to them, or spend time, which is one thing of some of us as women have box star time to be able to manage multiple things, so we don't necessarily sit and have time to do things um, beyond work, beyond office, beyond networking, beyond home, and delivering it above and beyond. You don't necessarily have time to go out for dinners and drinks often. It's not like we don't go out. For some men, for some managers, it's very important in how they define your performance. For some, it's ego of how you treat them. And for some, it is insecurity that they feel, right? Um, And I think the last but not least is also how much investment your manager is having on your growth. While every person's career is in their individual hand, that mentorship, guidance, the investment that your manager or boss is able to provide becomes very important. Every employee comes to the organization saying, I want to grow. Um, if a boss sees you as a tool to get the job done and not treat you well on the development plan, then the stagnation starts to kick in, and that is when people feel that there's no investment in growth. I know there is a lot of investment in tuning this leadership itself. Um, if I'm not wrong, I think HBR had said something around the scale of $15 billion investment happens every year for leadership training. Despite that, we will have a mix of good and bad and ugly.
This was a very comprehensive answer, and I think I started thinking too much while you were saying. So, this actually brings me to something that I often think about. So many of us actually work or have worked with someone and quietly wondered how did they even reach or become a leader? How did they even reach that step of the ladder? How, like, despite being a bad boss? So, why do you think bad bosses still exist and even get promoted? Do you think organizations are getting something wrong when they identify leadership potential here?
No, that's a brilliant question again. Often what happens is somebody is performing really well. They have been consistent high performers. We want to make sure they grow. At least, I'll go back to a few years before and now, right? When we started some years back, now I can say that I've worked for 25 years. So I keep saying at that time, Divya. So we never had a technical career path and a management career path. So if one had to grow, the only thing is if you were good at something, you got promoted to do some managerial work. Now, obviously, there are trainings that happens, but then is everybody who's technically good as good as in management? I don't think so, right? But since that was the only potential growth, people were made to become managers, and then the career path goes in that path itself, right? So it's the halo effect of high performers, and how do we retain those? That's part of the reason. And then the other one is really confusing performance with potential. Uh, and to me, that's one of the biggest mistake, right? Like I said, just because somebody is a great individual performer, they're not necessarily going to make it as a great leader. It's very different that I can do my work and I can do brilliant job of it, but am I as good in managing others' work? Because the definition of manager and leader is not how good I can do my work, right? It's how good I am at getting work done, and then how good I am at leading those people. Uh, that is one reason why that confusion happens, and then we promote people to leadership without even assessing the true potential, but confusing performance with potential. um, like I said, also tied to that is the retention, right? Somebody is doing well, we do not want to lose them, so let's promote them. The thinking of short term versus long term, because in the short term, I don't want disruption, but in the long term, is it beneficial for the organization and for everybody else around? I'm looking at it with a microscopic view of I do not want disruption now. So let's promote, keep this person happy. Um, to me, leadership is also a little bit like parenting. There is no great parenting, right? We all learn through the process. And because we learn through the process, there are 100 views of what leadership should look like. There is no set defined criteria. We'll learn, will make mistakes, we will learn. And or probably we don't even learn and we continue to do that, right? So lack of set criteria saying if you go and search for what are the leadership traits, depending on where you are reading, I mean, obviously there are common ones, but the list can be endless. And it's humanly impossible to have everything checked off. And it's humanly impossible to go to the last tail. And so we often pick the ones closest to it. Now, what should be the top? What should be the bottom? It's again based on my experience of how I'm evaluating, because there is nothing that says top one criteria should be this and top two should be this, right? Um, so that I think is another reason why we promote people and then it just continues. Good, bad, ugly. Whoever is visible, we think they're great at work, they need to be promoted. Whoever is doing a lot of self promotion, and you would have also heard, hey, because they are there, because they're very good at upper management, and we are all suffering here, but then they're very good at upper management. So it becomes a chain of events, right? Where do you stop this? Because they're good at upper management, they are promoted. Because they are good at visibility and for themselves, because they're good at self promotion, maybe it's the boss's boss which needs to be questioned then, right? um, One way to look at that though is, as we do 360-degree feedback, that's I think every organization is doing, but we don't necessarily do skip levels and multi skip levels. And anybody who is not agreeing to it, what would be the repercussion of it? So those are things that we can incorporate as we move. But then I'll shift the gear a little bit to today's. All of these have been talking about how it used to be, right? If I shift the gear to today, um, today's millennials, Gen Zs are crystal clear about what they want to do, which is very nice because I think when we came in, we said, okay, whatever happens, we'll go with the flow, right? Today, if this culture continues, we will have more attrition. So I think the managers themselves have to change. And hopefully in the cycle, we will change the system. So I have a lot of hope on our coming generation. I do sound old, but I do have a lot of hope on the next generation to redefine what leadership should look like. It's not just telling what to do. It's not just, hey, I am here, so listen to me. It is not the title, like you said, but it's a lot more human element. It's a lot more inclusion. It's a lot more culture, the integrated culture and not legacy, tenure, hierarchy. So I'm looking forward to that getting changed as we redefine some of these things.
That's so that's so beautifully and aptly put. And I love that example of disruption. Like we only talk about disruption in terms of digital transformation mostly. But I'm loving how you brought the angle of disruption in terms of organizational growth. Absolutely loved it. And I think you're missing your daughter a lot. That's why a lot of parenthood comparisons are coming in.
Nobody
Loving
teaches you. Nobody teaches both of these. But at
yeah.
least in the organization, you have leadership training, not the other one.
Yeah. Okay, so I think next I want to understand that you yourself have been into the leadership roles now, 25 years. And did you ever have that moment that, oh, wait a minute, I could have handled that better? So, just trying to understand what's something you have learned along the way that probably changed how you lead things now.
No, absolutely, Divya. It's not one or two, right? I think, like I said, it's a continuous journey. One big reflection is who I thought could be my succession. Uh, Again, going back to halo effect, brilliant person, absolutely great guy. The depth and content he would bring to the table, it would definitely be a shame to lose that individual from the organization. But leadership is just not technical, right? Leadership is about multifaceted, and technical guidance becomes one element. Now, this individual, obviously, from my succession planning, that was a choice I made, which I could have done a better job of. Because I knew that um, probably from a team perspective, that's not the best. Right? So that is one. And then I start with the element of trust. I always start with the element of trust. I always want to give the opportunity. But over a period of time, I've also learned while a lot of people show enthusiasm, the capability might not exist. So thinking that they are showing enthusiasm and just trusting them might be a failure for both of us, the individual and for me. So now I also make sure there are checkpoints, there are guidance where required, while not taking away the lenience they would have if they have that capability. So it's a fine balance. So there are multiple such learnings. Another one I would say is also perception, right? Um, while we all are very good at data analytics, the other, you know, as humans, we have perception of everybody. And the perception is not necessarily just yours, it also comes from multiple things that you would hear from others. At some point of time, the more you hear, the more the perception becomes reality. I've made a mistake of having perception about somebody which was not necessarily the reality. Right? because I probably didn't have a perception of my own. So now I always make it a point that it's not others' perception, it's my perception, and I have data point for those. So those are big things. Like I said, every day there are mistakes, then there are learnings.
Yeah. This was very interesting. And now I think I want to talk more about, you mentioned about trust and the things that you learn on the way. I would also like to talk a bit about empathy now. So, empathy is often seen as a strength, but some leaders worry that it makes them look weak or too soft. So, in your experience, how can leaders strike the balance between being approachable but without compromising on their authority?
See, empathy as a leader is one of the biggest traits anybody should have. Right? But that doesn't mean that you sit and listen to the story throughout the day. There are things to be accomplished, there are things to be done. Where do you draw that line? I think the strength in leadership is being assertive about what needs to be done, while you have components of everything else. It could be empathy, it could be how you're approachable, it could be taking feedback, any of those elements. But how do you assert yourself as leader? uh, Being assertive really means learning to be able to say no to few things. Being assertive to me is also how you're able to express the needs without disrespecting others, and how much are you able to listen, not just speak. uh, Again, going back to your first question, if I'm a bad boss, I'm probably very enthusiastic to speak about things that I want to say rather than listening. Everybody wants to be heard, and it's a basic human element. If, as a leader, I do not have basic listening skill, then I'm failing myself and others. Empathy is one component with multiple facets to it, and being truly listening, truly communicating what you believe in and what is the decision, being assertive, not necessarily aggressive about it. All of this adds to empathetic leadership. And that there's no taking away from the fact that empathetic leadership is most required and is going to be more required in the coming days, because for everything else, there is AI.
True. I think that's the line. Like, empathy is not about listening to the stories for sure, but striking the balance between being assertive and authoritative. So, yeah, very beautifully put. Now, I think I would like to move on a slightly different tangent. So, now there's also that fine line between a tough boss who pushes you and a toxic boss who drains you. So, for someone like me who is overly optimistic in life, especially about people, and would always think that, this person might end up contributing to my learning tank and growth, even if I'm not very happy with that person. So, keeping me in picture, how do you think professionals can gauge the difference? And when should someone realize that their boss is actually holding them back rather than helping them move forward?
No, that's a brilliant question, Divya, because tough bosses do not necessarily mean bad bosses at all.
True.
I think some of my biggest learnings have always come from difficult bosses, because they have a standard which is higher, then they expects you to have that standard, which will push you to deliver better, and you grow as an individual. But they are no means the bad bosses, right? Again, like I said, the definition of bad boss can differ people to people. Um, but at least for me, is my boss giving me psychological safety, right? On any given day, your boss can speak up, push you back, and say you've done mistake. You have to go back. This is a tough deadline. All these conversation happens, right? But if they're challenging you, but backing you up, that's a tough boss. And that's the one you wouldn't want to miss working with. But if you always have to walk on this eggshell where you cannot have a conversation, You cannot give feedback. It's one way. You're worried about, I'm delivering everything that I'm delivering, but I really don't know what is expected. How do I protect myself? Then it's a toxic, bad culture. Right? Um, if there is a problem statement and a certain standard is set for everyone, including themselves. If I'm saying, hey, Divya, this is the standard, if I'm also following that, you know where we stand because the field is same for everybody. Then it's a difficult boss, even if they're setting the standard higher. But if the standards vary depending on who it is, and then there are moving goalposts, someday the goal is some A, and depending on somebody else, it is for somebody else it's B. Then you do not know which direction you are going, right? That consistency and fairness of how you're getting measured, that again differentiate between the difficult boss and um, bad boss, right? um, and then I think I also talked to you about investment on you in the very beginning. The tough bosses really want to help you grow. They make you uncomfortable by giving you feedback, being tough, telling you directly how you're doing. They have a very high expectation. And directness is just deep rooted in them, right? There's no polishing. But they're invested in your growth, they are invested in your development. Again, those are the ones who change the narrative of your career. But if your boss is more concerned about control, ego, their own success, and how do you make them feel good, then probably it's a red flag. um, and the direct one, again, I keep touching on communication element because that's the direct one that we'll all see, is if somebody is using criticism and vagueness and microaggression, passive aggressiveness, then probably it's a toxic culture. But if you're able to get clear direction, a constructive feedback saying, hey, you've done this mistake, correct it, and this is what is expected, and it's okay to challenge ideas, opinions need not be just directly taken, brainstorming happens. When you leave the room, you feel you're more sharper, you're more smarter, then that is definitely a tough boss you're learning from. So, net, even if you're feeling stretched, super thin, even if you're there are days you are dead tired because there are high expectation when you're learning. At the end of the day, when you feel very accomplished, very energized, and each of these accomplishments help you improve your confidence, your skill, and opens up windows of opportunity, that is tough boss, but that's the best boss you can learn from. But if you're feeling very drained, you're feeling stuck, and you often are saying, how did I get here? Am I the right person for this job? Am I really good at this, or did I get it by fluke? Was it luck that was playing all along? While there could be opportunities on individuals, there could also be a reflection saying, is my boss helping me grow? Is this the right boss to work for? I hope I've answered. Uh,
Yeah. This was such a retrospective question for me, particularly because I've had like both sort of bosses. 5 years back, I was working somewhere, and I think that's the only boss that I regret having. But yeah, all the bosses, especially my current one, and for me, the biggest green flag, or as today's generation sees, the whole forest, is when you have a boss who actually asks you how you are and how your family is. Like that's the biggest support for me. So yeah, there's just
oh
too
yeah,
many thoughts right now.
no, and Divya, just to give you some example, personally as well, right? I've had bosses who've gone out of way to help or mobilize help when it was even personal situations. They have not just stood by me by professional, but at personal level at during difficult times. They don't necessarily ask you, "Hey, how are you?" every single day. It could be a coffee table, I mean, a water cooler conversation. But if you go and tell them I am in a difficult situation, or they understand, see, that's where empathetic leadership also comes into picture, right? They understand you're in difficult situation. They ask you, "Is everything all right? Is there anything I can do to help you?" That is empathetic leadership, right? And then they extend support to help you. I've also had bosses where I was in hospital taking care of things, um, come back, I am still trying to work. Hey, when will you come back to office? When can I get that deck? Right? At that time, you're very vulnerable and you wonder, really, is this the first thing running in anybody's mind when I'm in hospital taking care of family? Clearly differentiates the two, right? No, but then again, like I said, we also learn from everybody, right? To me, it's like I would never want to do this to anybody.
You learn to cherish rest of your bosses, I would say.
Yeah.
That's
So you were saying something.
Yeah, I was just saying that if your boss can just look at your face once in a while and ask you, "Are you okay?" That's the biggest green flag. And if you cannot be vulnerable with your boss, that's the biggest red flag for me.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So, yeah, I think that was very good. And finally, I think let's talk to someone who might be watching this right now whenever this goes live and someone watches this who is struggling with a difficult boss. They are feeling unheard, undervalued, and maybe even stuck. So, what one practical piece of advice you would want to give to them so that they can navigate through the situation without stalling their own career path or growth?
Divya, I always tell that career is a marathon. It's not sprint. Things are not working today. And sometimes it doesn't work. It could be organization culture, it could be your boss, or it could be your peers. It's equally important to have the right set of peers. Um, we spend minimum one third every day at work. Minimum. It's a lot more.
Yeah.
And if your peers and your team is not equally good, then you suffer. It's not necessarily the boss, right? Um, you know, tough days happen. Just just stay put. It will go away. It is not eternal. But what is important through all these things is really your network or your support system is very important. I could survive many difficult days because I had support. I had support of friends, I had support of family. You figure out what works the best for you when from a support perspective. Okay? That is one. And the second thing is, see, if it's really boss, it's important you also look at how do you solve for it. It is, um, do you want to run away from it, or you want to give it some time and see if it works? Okay. If you want to give it an attempt, because maybe your peer set is good, maybe your learning is fantastic. A lot of people still put up with bad bosses, or bad culture, toxic culture, because they're constantly learning and the work is fantastic, right? Then you're always overweighing. I'm learning so many things. My team is great. I'm having great peers. Organization culture is very good. It it's a loss aversion psychology, right? Where I am thinking, if I look at the pros and cons, do that pros and cons. That'll give you strength to sustain. Um, and maybe your boss doesn't like feedback. Don't give feedback. Ask for support. Massage the ego, and these are all short term, right? Like I said, engage with your support network. It's very important. Get lot of rest. Mental health does get impacted when some things are not going on. Lot of water, lot of sleep, lot of exercise, binge eat sometimes to give that craving in for the food. Um, Obviously, you can consult others in the organization who might be, don't gossip, that's different. Consult who maybe your perspective can be changed because they might have a different idea. And then, obviously there's always outside world. Parallelly start exploring other opportunities. To get the right opportunity, it does take time. So through that, remain positive. And when you're talking to another organization, never talk bad about your current organization. It's never a good sign. So, and then when you get there, don't do things that hurt you. That is definitely an advice, because if it hurt you, I can promise it hurt somebody else.
Yeah, definitely. That's very true. And I think just communicate. That's the end of everything.
Yes. Yes. But Divya was also telling you, right? How do we identify symptoms of some of these things, especially
Yeah,
the burnout, right? The trigger could be, the toxic behaviors are rewarded in the organization or by your boss. There are burnouts that happen for no good reason. It's not giving business results, but it is making somebody look good. And those burnouts are rewarded as badge of honor. Then there is definitely a red flag. And feedback is not taken. Your opinions are not taken. Career discussions doesn't happen. You can't speak up. Some information is only passed on to few people. There is favoritism. Then it does get very, very, very toxic. None of this, don't let any of this impact your mental health. Don't let it impact your physical health, right? You've all heard, like, how did this boss get there when they're this bad? You've also heard saying, no organization will come to you other than your family and friends and support. And so it's important that you take care of yourself. If that means looking for a job outside, if that means taking few weeks of break, use your leaves, take break, reflect on what really you want, energize, rejuvenate, whatever is the short term that gives you that energy, do that to keep it going. Don't give up. There will always be difficult times, difficult bosses, difficult situation. I'm sure if you've come all the way till here, you've always faced some of these hurdles, and I promise you will continue to face, right? But if you've come all the way, you already have it in you. Just take that break, energize, bring that energy back to keep you going till you find the next better opportunity.
that's the best mantra. So, yeah, I think that's the best part of the conversation, the piece of advice that you shared. And I think I just love the entire conversation with so many relatable perspectives, I would say, Sarah. So, thank you so much for being so open and so thoughtful about this. This was exactly the kind of conversation that I was hoping and looking for when I thought and imagined this episode to be like. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Divya, and I do hope this was useful for you, because your time was also precious, very, very precious. And um, and it's hopeful for everybody who's listening. And one thing that I definitely can offer is, believe me, I've had enough bad bosses, but I've probably had much better good bosses. And no matter what, when you're going through this difficult times with your bad bosses, it does drain out your energy. So, one thing I can offer is listening ears for you and support for anybody who wants. Um, Reach out to me on LinkedIn or through Divya. Divya has my number. She can definitely connect us. But if I can help you during difficult times, I think at least that to me, that has served the purpose of this podcast. I really hope you don't get into that situation, but if you need help, I'm here.
Definitely. I would also like to say the same to everyone watching us, that we really hope this resonates with you. And just remember, you're not alone in your workplace struggles. We are there to talk to you about it or about anything related to it. So, yeah. So, thank you so much, Sarah, again. And lovely, lovely speaking to you.
Same here. Thanks for having me, Divya.
Thank you.